The top story, PM Abiy reaffirms Ethiopia's support for Sudan at high-level humanitarian conference. Hello and welcome to EBC World, the voice of Pan-Africanism. With the news, I'm Tabitha John. To stay with us, we will be back after the following short transition. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed reaffirmed Ethiopia's steadfast support for Sudan while co-hosting the high-level humanitarian conference for the people of Sudan in Addis Ababa alongside the UAE, the African Union and IGAD. Tigusar Nisa has the following.
The conference aims to mobilize international support and humanitarian assistance for Sudan as it faces ongoing crisis. Ethiopia's role as a co-host underscores its commitment to regional stability and cooperation, particularly in addressing humanitarian challenges affecting the Horn of Africa. Speaking at the event, Prime Minister Abiy emphasized Ethiopia's deep-rooted ties with Sudan, highlighting their historical and cultural interdependence. The Premier further added that Ethiopia reaffirms unwavering solidarity with Sudan.
As a close neighbor and sister nation, Ethiopia stands in solidarity with the people of Sudan. During these challenging times, our two countries are deeply interdependent, bound by generations of shared struggles, aspirations, and cultural ties. Over the past 6 years, Ethiopia has actively supported Sudanese peace and stability and contributed to its economic endeavors by providing electricity through a dedicated transmission line. Sudan is a nation of abundance, blessed with fertile land and natural resources, capable of feeding millions beyond its borders. In times of relative peace, it has witnessed significant development and growth.
Prime Minister Abiy has also disclosed that, despite Ethiopia's own challenges, he says the country pledged a modest contribution of $15 million in solidarity of the people of Sudan.
Ethiopia will continue to stand with Sudan in its time of need, sharing from our limited resources and maintaining an open door policy for Sudanese seeking refuge. We urge donors, international organizations, and the private sector to increase their contributions and help bridge the severe resource gap faced by humanitarian actors. Despite our own challenges, we firmly believe that a neighbor in need is a neighbor indeed. Therefore, Ethiopia pledges a modest contribution of $15 million in solidarity with the people of the Sudan.
The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, for his part, urged that civilians and humanitarian workers should be protected, adding that sustained and rapid humanitarian access has to be facilitated.
As we focus on the response to the humanitarian needs, let's also be clear about basic principles. Civilians, including humanitarian workers, must be protected. Rapid, safe, unhindered and sustained humanitarian access must be facilitated in all areas of need. The external support and flow of weapons must end. This flow is enabling the continuation of tremendous civilian destruction and bloodshed. Excellencies, we know what the Sudanese people want. We have held extensive consultations with Sudanese civilians and are crying out for an immediate ceasefire and the protection of civilians. My personal envoy is engaging with warring parties on concrete ways to advance these aims, including through the full implementation of the Jeddah Declaration.
Held at the recently renovated Africa Hall UNECA in the Ethiopian capital, the event was attended by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, outgoing AU Commission Chairperson Musa Faki Mahamat, Kenyan President William Ruto, IGAD Executive Secretary Workneh Gabayo, as well as high-level delegation from UAE, Sudan, and other countries and multilateral organizations.
The President of the Islamic Republic of Mauritania, Mohammed Ould Sheikh Ghazouani, has arrived in Addis Ababa. On the other hand, the President of Madagascar, Andry Rajoelina, President of Tanzania, Samia Suluhu, President of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, and the Prime Minister of Mauritius, Navichandra Ramgoolam, have also arrived today to attend the 38th AU Summit. Upon arrival at Bole International Airport, the leaders were warmly welcomed by senior government officials of Ethiopia. The 38th Ordinary Session of the Assembly of Heads of State and Government of the African Union is set to begin on February 15, 2025.
Countries to begin to look at agriculture more as a business.
Everything that has to do with agriculture is CAADP. Whether you're talking about trade, if you're talking about youth employment, you're talking about wealth creation, the post-harvest management issues, the land-related issues, bringing on board the private sector, private financing, investment, that all is talking about CAADP itself. So CAADP broadly is the whole spectrum of agricultural development on the continent.
Foreign Affairs Ministry spokesperson Nebiat Getachew says Ethiopia has been actively advocating for Africa's representation at the UN Security Council. The spokesperson underscored Ethiopia's pivotal role in promoting peace and security in Africa as the country joins the AU Peace and Security Council for a 3-year term. Goshu Melliso has more from ENA.
During the 46th Ordinary Session of the African Union Executive Council meeting in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia has been elected as a member of the African Union Peace and Security Council, securing a 3-year term from 2025 to 2027. Ethiopia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson Nebiat Getachew stated that this 3-year term presents a significant opportunity for Ethiopia to contribute to resolving conflicts and promoting stability in the region.
The election of the AU Peace and Security Council membership. It is a 15-member body which follows peace and security issues of the African continent, and Ethiopia is elected as a member of this AU Peace and Security Council for the year 2025 to 2027 for a 3-year term.
According to the spokesperson, Ethiopia has long championed collective security, a commitment reflected in its active participation in major peacekeeping operations under both the United Nations and the African Union.
To see the vision of the Africa, we want the core principle or concept in that is to ensure a lasting peace and security to our continent. So in order, as we move towards that goal, each member country has to collectively endeavor to advance the causes of peace, the causes of peaceful resolution to conflicts, and that would be the main engagement and preoccupation of this African Peace and Security Council.
He stated that Ethiopia has a similar view towards having a rightful African representation at the Security Council of the United Nations.
We do have a concurrent view towards having a rightful African representation within the Security Council of the United Nations. For this to happen, the Organization for African Unity and lately the African Union has been pushing for this agenda collectively. And for this to be realized, not only within Africa, but we are pushing the agenda of rightful representation of the Africa within the United Nations Security Council with other like-minded countries, even outside the continent. So it's very crucial. It's high time that we see a fair representation within the United Nations Security Council.
The spokesperson emphasized the need for collaboration among member countries to effectively uphold the principle of African solutions to African problems.
From across the continent, leaders are arriving at Bole International Airport, stepping into the capital of Pan-Africanism, where history meets diplomacy.
Flowing through the vibrant streets, the energy of Addis reflects its role as a city of unity and culture, preparing to receive African leaders like never before.
As they settle in, Addis Ababa is ready to welcome its distinguished guests with its world-class facilities, blending tradition and modernity in the heart of Ethiopia.
And right here at the heart of Addis Ababa, the Africa Union stands tall, where leaders across the continent gather to shape Africa's future and strengthen the continent's unity.
Ethiopian Broadcasting Corporation is on the ground, bringing you closer to every moment of the 38th African Union Summit. From arrivals to high-level discussions, we are your trusted source. Once again, welcome to Ethiopia, where Africa's story unfolds.
And finally, renowned Pan-Africanist Professor Patrick Lumumba emphasizes the need for Africa to reshape its global narrative, urging the continent to establish its own powerful media platforms. In an exclusive interview with EBC's Addis Dialogue, he also highlighted Ethiopia's historical role in Pan-Africanism and called for a visa-free entry of African nationals. Johannes Fentahun presents the details.
Professor Paul Lumumba, a renowned Pan-Africanist and advocate for African unity, has called for the continent to take control of its global narrative by establishing influential media platforms. Speaking on EBC's Addis Dialogue, Professor Lumumba criticized the persistent negative portrayal of Africa in global media. He stressed that for Africa to control its own narrative, it must invest in powerful media platforms that can counteract stereotypes and misinformation.
The time has come for the continent of Africa to own its own media. One of the problems that we have in the continent of Africa is that we have no media of our own. When we talk about these media that we are using, whether it's the Zoom, whether it's Instagram, whether it's X, or indeed any other media, the reality is that we can be shut down at any time. And we can be shut down because there are people and organizations in the world that want to paint Africa in their own image, to depict the continent of Africa as this continent that is backward, to depict the continent of Africa as a continent that is laboring under underdevelopment and all those negatives. And if we did not, as they say in other parts of the world, if we did not smell the coffee, then the problem is ours.
Highlighting Ethiopia's historical role in the Pan-African movement, dating back its resistance against colonialism and its influence in the founding of African Union, he called on the Ethiopian government to introduce visa-free entry for African nationals.
The transition from the Organization of African Unity and ultimately to the African Union, there are many good things that have happened. Remember, under the aegis of the OAU, many African countries which were still laboring under colonization were liberated. But the Union can and should do better. One of the things that I continue to fault Ethiopian government about is free access to Addis Ababa. If there is any one country that should not require a visa from any African country, it is Ethiopia. But I still know people who need visas to come to Ethiopia, and I hope that the administration of Prime Minister Abiy will this year announce that not any African will require a visa or a work permit to be in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
He further stressed that Pan-Africanism must move beyond rhetoric and translate into tangible policies and drive economic growth, institutional strength, and self-reliance for future generations.
When the OAU transits into the African Union and ultimately we have Africa Agenda 2063, we are now telling ourselves that Pan-Africanism means that we must be united, and this unity is a unity of purpose that allows us to ensure that our people can move freely across the continent, that we have a single currency in the continent, that we have a common market in the continent, that we are adding value to the things that we do, whether it's in mining or agriculture or artificial intelligence. Pan-Africanism must therefore be understood to mean the solidarity of people of Africa and African descent wherever they are in the world.
Professor Lumumba's insights serve as a powerful reminder that Africa's future depends on its ability to shape its own narrative, foster unity, and implement policies that drive real progress.
You're watching ABC The Top Story. 3 p.m. Abiy reaffirms Ethiopia's support for Sudan at high-level humanitarian conference. That's all we had for now. I'm Tabitha John. Many thanks for watching. Goodbye for now.